everybody. My name is Adam Binet, and I'm the Center of Excellence for Digital Innovation at the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development here in New Brunswick. And I'm really excited today to be joined by Dimitri Pavlounis from CIVIX, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in our presentation. And today, this is our third of 6 webinar series, which we're doing on the digital literacy framework, which was sort of rolled out in New Brunswick here in the fall. And so as part of digital literacy, we're trying to highlight all the different aspects. There's a total of 6 components of digital literacy in our framework. And we're trying to highlight the importance of having those skills for students and teachers and everybody really to make sure that they can interact with our increasingly digital and connected world. So that leads us here. Today's a really exciting topic, I think is incredibly important, obviously. They're all important in different ways, but this one definitely is front of mind, I know, for me a lot of times. So without any further ado, what I'll do is I'll just go through just a few things to highlight and explain a little bit about what critical inquiry and meaning making is and what it means as a student, as an adult, as a young person. It doesn't really matter. We all need to know about it. So I'll get started and then I'll kind of hand it over to Dimitri and hopefully have some Q&A at the end. And yeah, so critical inquiry. So what is it? And here we go. So as students, you're using digital tools to find information that's right for their task. You look for information from different places and check if the information is correct. So that's actually a lot packed into a couple of short sentences. Again, the digital tools that students are using every single day, from a smartphone to a tablet to a laptop. However, some of our students might interact with your gaming console, because on a gaming console you can do, that's a digital tool and you can actually do research and open a web browser, for instance. In order to find information that's accurate and truthful, and again, Dimitri, I don't want to steal any from his side of things, but having a good skill set of being able to find and seek out relevant information for the task at hand is really, really important as a student, for sure, and just as a general life skill. And so hopefully as you continue to get older as a student, you're learning those skills all the time and refining them and getting a little bit better, and understanding that like something like Google is not the only option necessarily all the time, or if you are using Google, how to use it better. And we're on the precipice probably of the entire search. The way in which we search and interact with the internet might be literally changing in front of our eyes. It's exciting and a little bit scary at the same time. And you also look for information from different places. So again, not to take much from Dimitri, but that ability to do some cross-referencing. We literally have the world at our fingertips, and you've all heard that, but you have to take advantage of that. And so that's what part of this is all about. So another thing that we're looking for students to build as they go along in their digital literacy abilities is your ability to organize the information you find based on the importance or the topic, and you're trying to understand what it means. So that interpretation as a student, as a human being, is a really important thing that we all do, and interpret that data, interpret that information. Again, it comes back to the word literacy. How do you interpret things or read a text, or read something online, or see an image or a meme, or it doesn't matter. There's a lot of hidden imagery and meaning sometimes, reading between the lines, so to speak. And organization. Some students are really, really good at this. I'm old enough to remember when I first started teaching. I mean, we were still handing out hard copy agendas to students to put their little notes in and updates about their homework and things like that. But every student should really have a method for all of these things. And it takes time to get good at it. But if you're not using a tool right now to keep track of things as you do research or study, there's different tools in Microsoft Office, like OneNote, that are really great, something on your phone. You really need to come up with a way to do that. It'll make your life easier and better, and allow you to be more efficient. And I say that a lot when I talk to students. Getting good at technology will make your life easier in a lot of different ways, and will make your ability to do your schoolwork quicker. So, do you want to work on an assignment for 5 hours or 3 hours or 2 hours, right? The better you get at the tech, the quicker you can accomplish some of those things. And finally, you use your own knowledge and experience to decide what you think about it. So obviously, your personal lived experience with your family, your community, those around you, that is an important aspect to all of this as well. And understand when we see things online, the people that put those things online, they have their own personal lived experiences as well. So what I'll do is I wanted to define the whole phrase meaning making a little bit more for our students as well. So meaning making refers to the process of understanding and interpreting information in a way that's relevant and useful to yourself. Okay, so that you're making sense of that specific thing. And sometimes it takes work. You need things like context. You might need to go talk to an adult or a peer or somebody that specializes in something to help further understand it. And those are, again, great skills to have as a student. And again, it involves analyzing and reflecting on information and your experiences, and then using that understanding to draw different conclusions. You're forming opinions and you're making decisions. So again, as humans, we're always doing these things in the real world, but in the digital world, we have to have a skill set in that area as well. And it's really important. And you never want to draw conclusions or form opinions or make decisions based on inaccurate information. That can be dangerous, and it can really negatively impact your life as you move forward. So in other words, it's about making sense of things and figure out what they mean to you. And again, that's part of being a human in our real world, but also on the digital world, it's going to become an important skill. So essentially, there are a total of 5 different kind of concepts that fall under the umbrella of critical inquiry and meaning making as part of our digital literacy framework. I'm going to hit them really quickly, just try and provide a little context or some examples around them. And then I'll hand it over to our guest speaker, Dimitri, who has a few more concrete examples of things, which I think is the most important part of all of this, to provide the students with the skills and a little bit of information about how to proceed in their online lives. So the first concept is students show they can make good choices about using digital tools, deciding which ones to use and which ones to avoid. They can use what they've learned to explore new technology, make things with it. So again, making good choices, that is obviously a tough one. Hopefully students understand using digital tools for hopefully positive things is what you're using these digital tools for. Now, sitting back and playing video games for 5 hours every single night, I mean, it's fun. I get that. I enjoy video games as well, too. But again, is that maybe the best choice of your time, right? I don't know. Instead of playing the game, why don't you make a game? Those are the sorts of things that I like students to think about. Again, fake news or rumors or to cyberbullying, things like that. So we want students to be more aware about those tools. Just because it's in a virtual environment, it doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want. And again, trying to stuff you've learned in the past, right? Maybe in the real world, how can that apply to the digital world? So those are some of the concepts that are important as you get older and as you grow as a student and as a human. Again, there's a lot of different options out there, right? Just because something works for somebody else doesn't mean it works for you. Again, simple, like for the gamers in the audience, it's like, are you a PC gamer, Xbox person, a Nintendo, like so on and so forth. Whatever works for you, but you need to find a way to figure that out. And again, we got to think about how technology has changed the world, the way that people act and think, and we can also create new digital tools. This is the exciting thing I love to talk to students about is innovation, using technology for good, creating new apps, new websites, new services, repurposing technology for new and interesting ways. And again, using those tools can actually make you a stronger student, a better person, can make you a career, can make you money, all those sorts of things, or creative output as well. So the next concept is that students use digital tools to get better at finding, collecting, sorting, understanding, sharing, and saving information they find online. They can even make their own digital tools to help with this. So again, that seems like maybe in one way a bit boring, but if you don't have those strong organizational skills on a digital device, it can be harder. It can make your life more difficult. Just like a really messy bedroom or something, or a garage or whatever. If you can't ever find your stuff that you want to use, it gets to be kind of challenging over time. So as a young person, figuring out which different software, maybe and again, even simple things like, do you enjoy using a tablet more than a laptop? If you're a laptop person, do you like Mac or Windows? Are you a Google person or a Microsoft person? There's so many little things that you have to make a decision about. And I know in our school system, we kind of here's the tools that we've adopted and used. By and large, I mean, if you get proficient in those, it's going to be helpful anyway. Again, there's some other things here that we need to make and be aware of, right? That not everything on the internet is true. Some websites are not trustworthy. It's very easy to make really authentic looking websites and information by anybody, because anybody can publish. That's where the world really fundamentally changed in the late 1990s, right? Where we went from a world of like consuming newspapers, magazines, television. But now with the internet, it's an exciting and powerful thing to be able to publish on social media, websites, blogs, whatever, videos, YouTube, Twitch, etc. But you have to be careful as well, because anybody can do it, and there's no qualifications or license that you necessarily need. And so long as you don't break the law, you're free to continue to do that in a lot of ways. Some other things, as you get older and think about it, getting really efficient at searching and using keywords to find the right information. If you're not, if you don't know those skills, it's something to talk to your teachers about or talk to parents about. How can I use the internet to be more efficient and find the data and information I really, really want? And again, how do we organize this information? Bookmark websites, keep track of things, spreadsheets, tags. You need to find a system that works for you to make it a little bit easier as you go on. And then like things like feedback. You know, the internet is great for feedback, but it can also be really kind of ruthless and mean because sometimes people feel more empowered behind a keyboard, right? And it can be kind of anonymous. So those are just a few high-level things to think about. Okay, on to concept number 3. Students check to see if information they find is correct, fair, believable, and helpful for what they need it for. They do this by looking at who made it, where it came from, and thinking about it's useful for what they need. Again, this is a really, really important thing, and I kind of touch on it in the past slides. We need to check for things like you need to develop a skill set, and I know Dimitri is going to talk a little bit about this as well. You need to figure out a way to understand if our website's a reliable place for information. So again, when I say the word like legacy or traditional media, the Globe and Mail, the National Post, the CBC, there's different places where we know we can go for relatively or fully journalistically high level stuff. But again, where anybody can publish, we need to be really careful. And it's not that hard to make things look really professional and good. It really isn't. You can also do research on who authored that thing. I always find that to be an interesting example. If I land on a website that's a little bit interesting to me, I always love to go to the contact or about us section, read up on it. And then I do further Googling sometimes on that individual, like, why did they post the thing they posted? What's the motivation there? And so on and so forth. There's another aspect to all of this as well, that computers, at the end of the day, somebody is the one that has to make the product, make the search engine, right? And they have to make certain decisions as they develop those things. So sometimes that makes these tools less diverse. It's kind of complicated, but it's something to think about, right? And another really important thing is that the comparison of information. Again, the world at your fingertips, but in order to take full advantage of it, you actually have to use all of it, not just a single aspect of it. So those are some really important things to think about as you continue to grow as a student. Jumping to number 4, students carefully choose information they find online and use different tools to make collections of things that show they've learned something or come to a conclusion. So, I mean, most of you students sitting there, you're probably used to some of these things, right? You're working on a project, an assignment, you're doing an essay, you're doing a PowerPoint, you're doing a podcast, you're doing a video, you're making a website. You're putting those things together. right? And sometimes you're making a point, you're making an argument, those sorts of things. And being able to use those different tools, I find it very, very important that students should be open to that. Be open to getting good at using a lot of different software programs and camera technology and graphic design and Canva. I always liken it to being multilingual or like bilingual at least. But the better skill set you have across all these different things, the more tools you have in your toolbox, essentially. So it's really important to think about. So another thing is, again, when we're looking at that information online, right, we have to have the basis of good quality information so that we can make decisions based on that. And without the starting point, everything downstream will be sort of flawed, I think. In terms of like sharing our work and things like that, we need to understand like who we're sharing it with and what for, and to try and be clear and accurate ourselves and to be forthright. So there's a lot there, but just lots to kind of chew on a little bit. And I'll finish with our last concept and that's number 5, and that's students learn about how digital tools affect the way people think and act and how they change things like culture and the way they see the world. So again, I have the picture of TikTok there. TikTok quite honestly does change our world. Things go viral, things catch on, right? And TikTok, like there's all kinds of different aspects of TikTok from sillier things like dances, I guess. But then like cleaning hacks, or I know I watch a lot of cooking videos, but those things can catch on. Oh, why is everybody talking about olive oil coffee all of a sudden, or whatever? Like that's just one that came to mind recently. But these things impact the culture. In a world 100 years ago, we only knew and absorbed culture typically from those in our community, in our small geographical area. But that's changed so rapidly, right? Think about music, think about food, think about clothing styles. What was cool maybe in California or in Asia or parts of Africa or Europe, all of a sudden we're adopting that in lightning speed. So the world's really changed. And it also changes our outlook and some of our decision making, right? And those things can also hurt and help us make decisions. So those are a few things to think about. And some technology can be good for some, and some technology can be bad, right? Again, there's technology addiction. There's a whole slew of downstream things that come from things like social media, and we talked about that in our previous webinar on digital health and wellness, right? So how have these digital tools changed the world over time? How are we using them? What's going to happen in the future? And again, what's important to you, important to the community, and things like that. And realistically, predicting how these digital technologies could change the world in the future. Again, I kind of talked about that a second ago. Again, we're living through this wild experiment of social media and the proliferation or the increase or rise of artificial intelligence, for instance. It's all you hear about all the time right now, right? And in fact, just a few days ago, something like 1,500 of the most important people in technology actually said, maybe we should hit pause. Maybe we should hit pause on AI for a few months and wrap our heads around it, because without ethical parameters and things like that, the progress moves really fast, but we need to catch up to it as human beings. So, but those are some of the core concepts that we wanted to talk about with regards to the actual digital literacy framework. I'm going to hand it over to Dimitri, because Dimitri does a bunch of cool stuff and does a bunch of neat research and can actually provide you some real deal examples and tools that you can use as students. So yeah, I'll take a step back and hand it over.
Great. Can you all see that?
Just loaded for me, but should be coming up any second. Let me see here.
It's not showing up. It says I'm sharing. Let me see. Let me just.
Yeah. See if anybody else chimes in. I'll monitor the chat too if anybody wants to drop anything in the chat. Yeah. There. Yeah.
You see it? Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so thanks very much, Adam, and thanks for having me. And as Adam said, my name is Dimitri. I am the director of research at an organization called CIVIX. We're an organization dedicated to building the habits and skills of citizenship among youth. So for us, we're really interested in the concepts, especially concepts 2 and 3 that Adam was talking about, right? Because for us, it's very important that everybody learns to find, sort, and understand information, and to make sure that the information we find is accurate. Because knowing how to access information that we can trust is really important for a democracy to function, because we want to be able to have access to high quality information so that we can make the best possible decisions for ourselves and for our communities. And so with that, I think I want to start with a quick question. So I want to ask you, and so you can either feel free to come on mic, come on video, or just drop your responses in the chat. And I'm really just curious to those who are joining us, what are your main sources of news and information these days? I'm always curious to know where people are going to get news and information when they want to kind of know something about the world, or they heard a story and they want to learn more. Where are you going primarily these days?
I think or Ms. Evans is putting something in the chat. It's such a good question too, right, Dimitri? Because, well, how you don't know unless you ask. And some people are more in, and some students or young people might be in there. Okay, so like the CBC app. So that's okay. A response right there. Yep. Okay. Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, some people like the Facebook stuff, Twitter stuff. Yeah, they're using different news outlet apps.
That's it. Yeah, news outlet apps are very responsible. Yeah, you can don't feel like you need to tell me what you think I want to hear. Tell me where you actually are going to get your news and information every day, because you might be surprised with the places that I go to get my news and information.
Right. Yeah.
I was responses.
Well, there was maybe one more coming in. Okay. And then CNN. Yeah. So it seems like they're kind of more popular, probably mainstream. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and journalistic sources, great. Yeah, and often, when we ask young people, they do mention things like, they'll get things from TikTok, they'll get things from Reddit, they'll hear, something mentioned while they're watching a stream on Twitch, and they might go and look into it more. And obviously, it's great if you're using, journalistic sources. But the important thing here is that really, there's good and bad information everywhere. So we never want to say, don't get your information, 100% don't get there's no good information, for example, on TikTok, because there are professional journalists who use that platform to get information out. Right. There's good and bad information everywhere. These can all be, good sources. They all can be bad sources. And that's kind of what's empowering about being online. But that's also what makes things really tricky, because sometimes it's hard to tell, whether the information is of, reliable, accurate, or if it isn't, right? And we know there's a lot of weird stuff online, and it's not always easy to tell whether something is credible or not. So maybe we can start with a quick warm-up activity. So I'm going to show you 2 images. So it's something relatively light, but here are 2 images, so 2 tweets showing what appear to be some kind of unusual product. So on the left, we have it says it's a KFC branded sunscreen that smells like fried chicken. And on the right, we have a cold dog. So it's like an Oscar Mayer Wiener hot dog popsicle that says it's complete with a mustard swirl. What I want you to do is I just want you to take 30 seconds to look at these and decide whether you think they are real or fake, and then let me know your reasons. So again, you can either drop some reasons in the chat, or you can come on mic or come on video.
Yeah, don't get any ideas and go and make your hot dog popsicle at home. Boil up some hot dogs and pour the water in your.
Let's see, do we have any responses? What do people think?
Taking a look at the chat here. Here we go. We got some responses coming in.
Okay.
I do love the Colonel Sanders character.
Yeah, so you could think they're both real products, both fake products, one real, one fake, whatever you think.
Yeah, here we go.
And the reasons why.
Okay, so Mr. Mulligan says, my class think the hot dog is real.
Okay, the hot dog is real.
Okay. Oh, fake. Okay, fake. So Ms. Evans said fake both of them just because they're gross.
We hear that, yeah, we hear this all the time. So we show these to students, but we show these in a lot of times to teachers, administrators, parents, and often that the number one reason why people dismiss them is because they just think these seem to be too gross to exist. Like, why our world doesn't need these products. Some other comments we get all the time is like, okay, it doesn't make, some students, really smart answers too, so they'll say, what I know of KFC is that they're a restaurant. They primarily sell chicken. It doesn't really seem to make business sense for them to sell a gross sunscreen. And so they say that can't be real. And so they use those kind of critical thinking skills as well. And just so you know, I can do the reveal and I can give a little bit more information. So in this case, the sunscreen is a real product, and the hot dog, maybe unfortunately, is also a real product. And just so you know, we were meeting with a bunch of teachers last week, and only 14% were able to kind of get this right. Most people were duped by these. So if you did get these wrong, you're actually in the majority. And really, in the grand scheme of things, it probably doesn't matter if these products exist or not. But the point here is, right, there's many times when we apply, our gut instinct, our what we can call our plausibility filters, right? Our ability to look at something and then think about whether or not it makes sense given our understanding of the world. And, sometimes that leads us to the correct answer, but often that leads us to an incorrect answer. And, sometimes those kind of gut instinct skills that we have fail when the stakes are much higher than whether a KFC sunscreen is real or not. But for a lot of people, for students and for teachers, when asked a question like this, the default is often to try to critically analyze what's in front of you and to try to logic out an answer, right? It's critical thinking. That is what you're always told to use. So a lot of people just look at these and think critically. And so sometimes we get, really smart answers, just even reacting to these, saying, these are gross. That's using some critical thinking, saying, these things they don't seem like they should exist in the world. They're too gross. Nobody would buy them. That's an example of critical thinking, but in this case, it leads us astray. Because when it comes to information online, and we want to know whether something is credible or not, more or less for sure, just applying kind of our gut is not the best approach. Instead, the better thing to do is, in this case, get off the page, do a little research, and find some additional context. And so the best way that research has shown to be able to find this type of context with online information is to do what we can call lateral reading. And so the difference between what we can call vertical reading and lateral reading is really the key concept here. And these are really just two different types of ways of engaging with information. And so for vertical, you can think about up and down, and lateral, if you're not familiar with the term, you can think about it as, side to side. Some teachers even call it side reading. And so what most people do when they try to assess and understand information that they find online is that they read vertically. So they try to apply these really close reading skills. They try to analyze the content itself to try to figure out if it seems credible, if it makes sense. Lateral reading, on the other hand, right, side to side reading, refers to the act of leaving the page. So if you're on a website, or if you're scrolling on social media, leaving that page, opening up another tab, and doing a little bit of research to investigate the source or claim to gain a little bit more context about what you're looking at. So let's break this down in a little bit more detail hopefully this will clarify what I mean by this. So here are some examples of vertical reading. And these are things that a lot of people do, and they backfire a lot. So for example, a lot of people, if they come to a website, they'll try to see if it looks professional. And, as Adam mentioned, these days, a lot of people can make websites that look professional. It's very possible that you've learned to make a website that looks professional. If you haven't, you will in the coming years. So that, professional looking website is not itself a sign of credibility. A lot of people, say, read the about page, but that can also backfire. For example, if you're on a site that is credible, then reading the about page will give you more information about that site that will probably be reliable. But if you're on a website that is maybe trying to deceive you, there's no reason that their about page would tell you that they're trying to deceive you. So for example, we see a lot of organizations that present themselves as objective research organizations, but really their goal is to try to persuade you or convince you. So they might not, show information from, on both sides of an issue. What we want to do instead is figure that out and then come back to that page to decide whether we want to engage with it further. Another thing that backfires all the time is checking the URL. Some people are taught that a .com is more reliable than, that a .org is more reliable than a .com, which is just, that's not true. Anybody can buy a .com, anybody can buy a .org domain. And then often, people just try to read a story closely to see if it sounds realistic or plausible. And as we've seen, that can also backfire again and again. So again, these are strategies that a lot of people use, but that don't work. And research shows again and again that these strategies don't really work. And so we don't always want to rely on them. Instead, what we want to do is, again, what we call lateral reading or side-to-side reading. And so these strategies are all about learning how to use the rest of the internet and all of the knowledge on the internet to learn more about a story, to learn more about a source, to learn more about a claim, and gain context before we dive in further. And so some of the strategies here could be learning how to use the internet to learn about the reputation of a source, learning how to check to see if a story or claim has been reported by reliable sources, or doing some quick searching to find out where information, quotes, or images originally come from. So there are a lot of different strategies we can use here, but today I just want to go over probably the simplest one, which is a claim check. This is probably something that a bunch of you already do, but people don't do it as frequently as they should. So when you hear a rumor or see something online, but you don't recognize the source, one easy thing you can do is just run a quick keyword search to see if that story has been reported on by sources that are reputable. So for example, let's say we go back to those examples of weird food. And imagine I wanted to figure out if that hot dog popsicle was actually a real product. Instead of, staring at it or trying to figure out whether it makes sense, I could just go to Google or to another search engine, do a quick search for keywords. In this case, I could just search hot dog popsicle. And in this case, I get a lot of hits here. So some of you might recognize, this first source, which is USA Today, but some of you might not. But if we scroll down here, let's go to this one at the bottom. Some of you might recognize this. This is the Globe and Mail, which is a major Canadian news source. The headline there seems to suggest that this cold dog is a real thing. And then if I want to learn more, just click through and I can learn some extra context. So in this case, I learned that this is a real product, but as we can see at the bottom, it was a limited time offer only in some American cities. So that explains, why you might not see these at your local grocery store. And again, right, this type of strategy, this quick search seems obvious, but people don't do it and instead often try to rely on their intuition instead. And so once you develop this habit of lateral reading, of again, getting off the page, doing a quick search, this process doesn't take more than a few seconds, and it leads you to better conclusions time and time again. And of course, right, knowing whether a cold dog is real probably doesn't matter to you and your lives. It probably doesn't matter if you believe it to be fake and it's real, but you can apply these same skills to stories that might actually impact you or ones you might care about. So for example, here's a headline that I saw on social media a couple weeks ago saying that Maine was shipping its surplus of human waste into New Brunswick. And I'm not going to lie, when I first heard this, I thought this was a joke. I heard this, a coworker told me this was happening. I said that can't be true. But in this case, I got off the page. I did some lateral reading. In this case, quick keyword search of just Maine human waste New Brunswick, and found right away that the story was being reported on by a number of journalistic sources. So here we see it being reported on by the CBC and the National Post, which are both Canadian professional news sources, meaning that a professional journalist has reported the story and we can probably trust the details that they provide. Right? So in this case, I learned that this headline was true. And if I want to learn more, I could just click on the story and read more to learn about why this is happening and figure out whether this is something I should be concerned about or not. So that's just one lateral reading technique that you can use to help verify information. There are many more, and if you are interested, we have a program called Control F that goes into much more detail and provides many more examples, and you can find that at controlf.ca. But for now, I will turn it back over to Adam, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dimitri. I dropped the I did drop the link into the chat box for the Control F and for CIVIX earlier, and I'll drop a couple more links in there. But yeah, any questions, Jill? There's my colleague Jill. Hello, Jill.
Hello, Dimitri. Nice to meet you. I've been listening in. Very interesting stuff.
Hi, good to meet you.
Good, nice to meet you too. I'm the center lead for entrepreneurship. So, so a lot of what I do kind of parallels, Adam's center. It's all kind of mixes together. So, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and it's important too. And I think, Dimitri, not only for our students, but for the adults, the teachers, to learn all of these things, because it just sort of it unfolded this world in such a rapid way that. To take a step back and actually think about it, right? So that's why I really like Control F, to actually provide skills and tools for students to use. And it's important. And then in the entrepreneurial world, right, too, Jill, I keep thinking about there's a lot of decision making that entrepreneurs have to use and make, and it's very important. And to not to be part of the problem either.
For sure.
Yeah.
And just learning that knowledge, because a lot of people, it's not intrinsic knowledge. So
yeah. Exactly. So thanks for hopping on. That's exciting.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if Mr. Mulligan or Ms. Evans, if there's any other follow-up questions or anything like that, but I will point you in a couple directions for fun. On our website, I'm going to drop this link. So I dropped a couple more links in there. The digital literacy framework for the teacher side of things is in the chat box. And then I do have a few activities on my website featured. Of course, Control F's related materials, and then some of the stuff from like Media Smarts and Common Sense Media. There's some good organizations out there that have a lot of different like lessons and those things. So, yeah. So, thank you. Thanks, Bonnie, for jumping on. And yeah, if there's no other questions, and people are free to turn. I know it's shy sometimes to don't turn webcams on and stuff. Like I said, unfortunately, I wish our classrooms were set up better for some of this stuff. You know what I mean? Like to have a camera on the instructor, but some on the students sometimes. But no, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mulligan. Well, and if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm bugging Dimitri all the time, so you can always connect with him as well. And Control F at CIVIX, and they're great organizations. And I can't thank you enough for joining me. So if there's nothing else, I'm going to turn our recording off. And again, thank you to everybody for joining. And yeah, have a great day.